Welcome to the pod Biomanufacturing and Fermentation Technology. In this episode, we translate microbial science, process engineering, and manufacturing realities into insights that scale.
If you want to see what post-commodity metabolic engineering really looks like, you should watch what is happening around diamines, not just fuels and acids. Putrescine, a simple C for diamine, sits at the intersection of polyamide plastics, coatings, agrochemicals, and advanced materials, and the new metabolic engineering paper by Ko, Kim, Nazarbekov, Sangyup Lee and colleagues on metabolic engineering of Escherichia coli for the high-level production of putrescine is a statement that microbial diamines are ready to move from curiosity to engineered, investable platforms. What makes this particularly important is that they are not just pushing titers, they are redesigning E. coli to behave like a true diamine factory, and they are doing it in a way that directly challenges petrochemical cadaverine, putrescine routes and the existing adipic acid and nylon value chain. The core breakthrough. Even though we cannot see the full article text due to access restrictions, we do know the central headline: the final engineered strain produces 72.7 GeL of putrescine from glucose, with a yield of 0.25 grg and a productivity of 1.28 GeL/H, described as the highest putrescine titer reported from a simple carbon source. That single sentence already encodes the core breakthrough, a deliberate metabolic rewiring of E. coli so that carbon flux is driven aggressively into the ornithine-putrescine branch of arginine metabolism, and then out of the cell, at industrially meaningful concentrations. The central hypothesis is clear: by combining pathway amplification, byproduct removal, and systems-level flux balancing, you can cross from low double-digit GeL demonstration fermentations into the serious amino-derivative regime where industrial evaluation begins. Mechanistically, this sits on top of a familiar but still non-trivial architecture: glutamate to ornithine via the arginine pathway, decarboxylation to putrescine, and then export. What the authors indirectly reveal, through the numbers, and their group's history, is that the real innovation is not the mere presence of these pathways, but their coordination, removal of competing sinks into arginine and polyamine homeostasis, careful management of nitrogen assimilation, and tuning of central carbon such that ATP and reducing equivalents are not rate-limiting at high flux. This is metabolic engineering as systems choreography, rather than a list of overexpressed genes. Competing technologies and scientific debate. The industrial significance becomes clear when compared with how putrescine and its cousins are made today. Most polyamide value chains still start from petrochemical adipic acid, hexamethylene-diamine, and related intermediates, manufactured via oxidation and hydrogenation routes with nitrous oxide and other emissions that regulators increasingly dislike. Bio-based diamine efforts have historically focused on cadaverine, C5, from engineered Corynebacterium glutamicum, and on routes to platform C4 acids such as succinate and 3-hydroxypropionic acid that can be upgraded chemically. A direct C4-diamine route from sugar in E. coli competes head-on with these strategies, offering a one-step biological solution where chirality is not the draw, instead, it is process simplification and carbon intensity. Within microbial production, the field is divided between those who treat polyamines as toxic stressors that must be tightly regulated and those, like this group, who argue that with sufficient engineering of exporters, membrane composition, and acid-base homeostasis, cells can tolerate and even thrive at high diamine concentrations. What makes this result scientifically provocative is precisely that, pushing putrescine to 72.7 GeL forces a re-examination of long-held beliefs about polyamine toxicity. Are cells inherently unable to handle such levels, or have we simply not yet engineered the stress response and export machinery aggressively enough? The answer emerging from this and related work is that toxicity thresholds are plastic, they are an engineering parameter, not a hard natural law. Engineering and fermentation interpretation. From a fermentation engineer's standpoint, the architecture implied by these metrics tells a clear story. A titer around 70 GeL from glucose in shake flasks would already be impressive. In controlled bioreactors, it tells you that glucose uptake, nitrogen assimilation, and TCA flux have been tuned to support both growth and heavy product formation. Putrescine is fully protonated at physiological pH, so at these concentrations you are dealing with a dense broth rich in positively charged solutes, which affects ionic strength, osmotic stress, and potentially broth rheology and foaming. From a manufacturing standpoint, this changes the equation because it forces you to consider oxygen transfer, co-stripping, and base addition not just as generic utilities but as direct modulators of polyamine speciation and export. The study does not explicitly report which fed batch or do control strategy was used, but drawing on similar E. coli platform work from this and other groups, a typical industrial logic would be a two-stage process: growth-focused, high-do phase to build biomass, then a product formation phase with tightly controlled feed to avoid overflow metabolism and acetate accumulation. Oxygen transfer becomes a central constraint. Putrescine synthesis is redox-intensive and demands robust NADPH-LNADH supply, which in aerobic systems couples back to respiratory activity and thus to CALR. For scale-up, that means early design of agitation, aeration, and possibly oxygen enrichment strategies, ensuring that the metabolic design is compatible with the inevitable DO gradients in large tanks. Quantitative performance translation. Let's translate 72.7 GeL, 0.25 GUG, and 1.28 GeLH into industrial language. On titer alone, this places putrescine into the respectable but not yet lysine class category. Mature amino acid processes often exceed 100 to 150 GeL, but many commercial operations run profitably in the 60 to 120 GeL band depending on product value. A yield of 0.25 GUG glucose is clearly below the thermodynamic maximum. It likely reflects a combination of biomass formation, byproduct formation, and maintenance energy. For a commodity or near-commodity product, industrial targets usually push toward at least 0.4 to 0.5 GRG to be fully cost-competitive with petrochemical routes, though higher selling prices and green premiums can compensate. This conclusion is inferred from comparative literature on amino acid and platform chemical economics rather than from this paper directly. Productivity at 1.28 GeL/H sits in a range that is operationally meaningful. With a 72.7 GeL titer, one can estimate a fermentation time of roughly 55 to 60 hours, similar to many industrial amino acid cycles. That means, from a plant utilization perspective, the process does not require extreme cycle times or exotic scheduling. Existing stainless steel with standard upstream logistics can, in principle, support it. The deeper implication here is that the bottleneck has moved from can we produce putrescine at significant concentrations to can we raise yield and downstream recovery efficiency enough to compete on cost and capital intensity. Manufacturing and commercial feasibility. Downstream, putrescine is both a blessing and a challenge. Its high solubility and basicity suggest that ion exchange and crystallization workflows similar to amino acid processing are feasible, and existing industrial experience with lysine and other cationic amino acids gives a ready-made template. However, being a diamine means stronger interactions with resins, more pronounced pH sensitivity, and potentially more demanding regeneration cycles. DSP complexity and resin lifetime will matter greatly in CAPEX/OPEX modeling. The study does not explicitly report DSP details or recovery yield, so industrial feasibility on this front remains a major unknown. Utility consumption also deserves scrutiny. A 0.25 GUG yield implies that a substantial fraction of carbon is burnt for energy and redox balancing, rather than ending up in product. At scale, that translates directly into higher oxygen demand and heat removal requirements per kilogram of product, issues that become non-trivial in 100 to 300 cubic meters fermenters. Oxidative stress, foam control, and base consumption to maintain pH in the face of co-evolution and nitrogen metabolism will all feed into OPEX. Industrial validation remains unclear because no pilot scale or demo scale data are reported in the abstract or accessible snippets, and we must be honest, until this process runs in at least a few cubic meter stainless steel vessels, the manufacturability remains promising but unproven. Market and strategic industry context. Where does microbial putrescine sit in the global market map? Putrescine and related diamines feed into polyamide and polyurethane chemistries, specialty coatings, and agricultural products, collectively representing a multi-billion-dollar segment growing at several percent CAGR as lightweight materials, high-performance plastics, and sustainable coatings expand. This market framing is drawn from broader polymer and specialty chemical reports, not from the paper itself. The industrial significance becomes clear when compared with fossil-derived diamines, regulatory and customer pressure on nitrous oxide emissions, benzene-derived intermediates, and overall Scope 3 footprints create a strategic opening for bio-based diamines that can convincingly demonstrate lower cradle-to-gate emissions. Strategically, Putrescine does not stand alone. It sits beside cadaverine, hexamethylene-diamine, and even bioadipic acid processes in an emerging biopolyamide platform war. Different companies and academic groups are staking claims on different chain lengths and monomer combinations. A robust sugar-to-putrescine process from E. coli with record titers, backed by a group with a track record of moving technologies closer to industry, signals that seafood diamines are now genuine contenders rather than just academic exercises. Global deployment, however, will depend on who controls cheap sugar, who has compatible polymerization assets, and who can integrate these new monomers into existing nylon and polyamide supply chains without enormous retooling. Startup and investment intelligence. From a startup perspective, this paper reads like a technology building block rather than a finished business. On the IP side, core pathway concepts for putrescine production in E. coli have been around for over a decade. Defensible positioning will come from specific strain designs, dynamic regulation motifs, export systems, and integrated DSP that yields a cost advantage and robust operating window. What makes this particularly important is that the group has pushed the performance frontier, even if the basic idea is prior art. Incremental, well-crafted patents around this high-performing chassis and its control logic can still offer valuable licensing leverage. For investors, the key questions will be, is this a platform or a product? Putrescine can feed into several derivative value chains, polyamides, agro-intermediates, even specialty coatings, and a strong venture case would frame it as a Bio-Diamines platform rather than a single-molecule business. Whitespace innovation opportunities include coupling putrescine production with co-fixing central carbon modules, as seen in newer studies on non-canonical reductive TCA pathways, to lower carbon intensity further and differentiate on sustainability metrics. Risks to commercialization include yield gaps, polyamine toxicity at industrial scale, resin and purification costs, and the conservative nature of the polymer industry, which tends to move slowly in qualifying new monomers. Time-to-market realism, informed by history with biosuccinic acid and 1,3-propanediol, would likely be on the order of 7 to 10 years from first high-titer publication to meaningful commercial penetration, unless large chemical incumbents get involved early. Future scientific direction. Scientifically, this paper underscores, but does not yet resolve, the central tension in high-level diamine production, metabolic burden versus robustness. Driving 70+ GCl of putrescine through the ornithine pathway places heavy demands on nitrogen assimilation, ATP supply, and redox balance, and almost certainly triggers stress responses around membrane integrity and acid-base homeostasis. The field appears divided between two engineering philosophies. One camp embraces highly engineered, tightly regulated circuits that squeeze every gram of product out of the cell, accepting fragility and narrow operating windows as the cost of peak performance. The other camp argues for more evolution-driven, adaptive laboratory evolution-enhanced chassis with simpler genetic modifications but extensive selection for tolerance, betting that these will outperform at scale even if lab titers are modestly lower. The deeper implication here is that the real industrial bottleneck may not be the putrescine pathway itself, but the host's ability to manage chronic polyamine stress while maintaining high respiration and carbon throughput. Addressing that will require integration of multiomics, genome-scale modeling, and dynamic flux analysis to identify non-obvious targets in membrane synthesis, ion transport, and global regulators, not just the usual suspects in the arginine pathway. There is also a broader systems-level debate looming. Should diamine platforms be built solely on E. coli, or should we explore more naturally tolerant hosts, such as certain gram-positive bacteria or yeasts, that may better handle cationic metabolite accumulation even if the initial engineering barrier is higher? The study does not explicitly compare host options, leaving this as a critical open question for the next wave of research and startups. Stepping back, what this paper really says is that the age of serious microbial diamines has begun. A 72.7 GEL Putrescine process with record performance metrics signals that we are approaching the point where techno-economic models will start to look credible in the boardrooms of polymer and specialty chemical companies. From a scientific standpoint, it is a showcase of how far precision metabolic engineering has come, rational flux redirection, stress management, and export engineering combining to push a once toxic metabolite into the tens of grams per liter. From an industrial standpoint, it is a call to action. The upstream strain is no longer the only bottleneck. Now the hard questions are about downstream separations, yield improvement, and global supply chain integration. For researchers, the challenge is to push yield closer to thermodynamic limits and to design hosts that remain stable and productive under the complex gradients of real tanks, not just benchtop reactors. For entrepreneurs, the challenge is to pick the right segment of the diamine value chain, craft a differentiated IP and sustainability story, and build partnerships with polymer majors early enough that the technology is co-developed with downstream applications rather than thrown over the fence. For investors and industrial strategists, the message is straightforward. Microbial diamines are moving from an interesting slide at conferences to a tangible lever in decarbonizing materials, and those who understand both the metabolic details and the manufacturing realities will have an edge. What makes this particularly exciting is that Putrescine may end up being remembered not only as a product, but as one of the first clear proofs that metabolic engineering can systematically rewrite even toxic metabolism into robust, scalable industrial chemistry. To orient any deeper discussion, are you more interested in how this Putrescine platform compares economically and technically with bioadipic, biosuccinic routes to polyamides, or in how to extend this diamine chassis into a broader family of amine-containing performance chemicals?
You've been listening to Biomanufacturing and Fermentation Technology with Prasad Urnala. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, keep engineering biology into reliable manufacturing.